Good morning. It's Saturday and time for the Real News Radio. And now, here's Farron.
Hello and welcome to the Real News. We've got a lot in store for you today. We've got two guests. Our first guest this week is going to be Mr. McCraft, attorney who represented Tommy Cryer and defeated the IRS. We will discuss taxes and whether the income tax is voluntary. The Real News crew this week went to Washington, D.C. for the Freedom Rally Tuesday. It was a really great event to see people using their right to free speech on the Capitol lawn. We interviewed Russell Means, chief of the Lakota Indians. We will be getting into this story. They have withdrawn from the United States and advocate their own nation in America, and it looks like they well may be within their legal rights. We'll be following that story. Our interview with him is on our YouTube channel, the Real News Radio. We also interviewed Ernie Hancock, president of the Libertarian Party, Tommy Cryer, a tax freedom advocate that defeated the IRS. Again, all these interviews are on our YouTube channel and soon will be on our website. Some of them we will be airing here on the radio, but this week we've got two guests, so we're not going to be able to address that today. We were the only press at the tax protest on the Capitol lawn. Of about 2,000 people, should have been 20 million, but we were the only press. I want to thank WSIC for giving us the opportunity to cover this event and relay it to the public. All of the interviews and just some general coverage of the music and events are on the YouTube channel. We will also have as a guest today Scott Cadle, Republican candidate for county commissioners. He will be our guest at the bottom of the hour. We will go to break now and come back with Larry McCraft, and after the interview with the gentleman running for county commissioner, we will take your phone calls after that point. So we've got a little different format today, so we're going to go to break now and we'll come back with our first guest.
Carport, storage buildings, garages, truck accessories, auto glass tinting, toolboxes, hamper tops, come to Custom Accessories, Highway 21 North, 1 mile.
We're back on the Real News, and we're going to Mr. McCraft. This is going to be our guest today. Are you with me today, sir?
Thanks there, Statesville.
Everything's good. How you doing today?
Oh, it's a beautiful Saturday morning here.
And where are you at, sir?
I'm in Huntsville, Alabama. We call ourselves space capital of the universe.
Ah, okay. All right. Well, we know that you represented Tommy Cryer, defeated the IRS, and we'd like to just give you this opportunity to tell us a little bit about that case and how you went about that and what happened.
Well, the income tax is something that, is applicable to, the system says it's applicable to all Americans. And there's a lot of people out here that look at the law. The people that have a belief about the income tax typically never look at it. What amazes me is the fact that a lot of people, when they sit down and start looking at the income tax laws, and they say, whoa, there's something here, and it's different from what I thought. And the woods are full of people like that. They sit down and read the tax laws and say, hey, it doesn't apply to me. Tommy Cryer was one of those people. He happened to be a lawyer from Shreveport, Louisiana. And, of course, we tried that case last summer. It was a very short trial. It lasted about 2 days. And on Wednesday, I think it was July the 11th, the jury came back with an acquittal, acquitted Tommy of all the charges.
How is it that some people beat the IRS in cases like this, and some people go to prison? What's the deciding factor? Just different juries?
Well, yeah, juries have a real big role or impact on the tax system. You have most people that'll sit on there. Most Americans sit around. Nobody really studies the law, and I think it's real important for people to study law. It's the fabric of society. It's applied to people. People ought to study the law. A lot of people in the tax movement do study the law. Then there are a lot of the people that get exposed to the tax movement. They do little to prepare themselves, and then when they get up in front of a jury, and this is, I represented people like this. They get up in front of the jury and they really can't explain their own position. So, for somebody that's in the tax movement, you really need to sit down and study the tax laws, and then you can explain it to people that you've never met. Well, it's yours. And the better you are at explaining to people your beliefs, the better of a shot you're going to have at getting an acquittal. That's why Tommy prevailed. Tommy had sat out and studied the law. Of course, he was a lawyer. But, he had gone through the Internal Revenue Code, done such things as, when I look at the statutes that require the filing of a return, there's the subject of the filing requirement is this person known as a person made liable, or every person liable. And he couldn't find the liability provision in Subtitle A, which is the income tax, 526 of the Internal Revenue Code. A lot of people have that same belief, whereas the section that makes somebody subject to the income tax, a section that makes them liable. If there's a section that makes them liable, most people will file. The problem is the Internal Revenue Code is written in very cryptically, and when the people sit down and start looking at it, they really reach some very interesting questions. How does this law apply to me? And the woods are full of people like that. There are people out there that study, and there's an open battle going on right now with people in America. They're challenging and saying, hey, I don't believe the income tax applies to me. And of course, the more schooled, the more educated you are about explaining your beliefs, the better you have a chance of it in front of a jury.
Is it the law that never was? Do you advocate that the federal income tax is voluntary and that there is no law?
Well, that's a very interesting proposition. The government itself is the one that comes out with this idea. The people that are in the tax movement don't sit around and invent stuff. There's a lot of statements by the government. For example, back in 1953, there's a fellow named Dwight Davis that appeared before Congress in an investigation of the Internal Revenue Service. And Dwight Davis was a high official in the Bureau of Internal Revenue at the time, came out and said, hey, your income tax is 100% voluntary, and your alcohol tax is 100% enforced. And it's statements like that, when people come along and, see the government, see the IRS making statements like that, then they sit there and say, hey, how can that be? And then when they sit out and study the tax laws and cannot find the liability provision, making them liable for the income tax and making them consequently required to file returns, a lot of these people can reach the conclusion, hey, we're being buffaloed, we're being subjected to a giant scam. And, there are some real questions about how the federal income tax applies. And, of course, the North Carolina tax uses a lot of the terminology and is connected to the federal income tax, so you have the same questions there.
Do you think we will ever see real tax reform, or will this money-grubbing Goliath just continue to grow?
Well, I wish the American people would do something about all of this. There have been a lot of movements in the past. There are a lot of movements presently. If you take a look at Ukraine a couple of years ago, the people were so fed up with what was going on in their government that during the middle of the winter they had a revolution. And people were camping out in the streets in the bitter cold and knee-deep in snow. Well, something like that needs to happen in this country. The people are, the American people really don't need to be sheep. They need to start wearing the pants of this family, and they ought to shake an angry fist at the government and say, hey, there's a lot of things we think that are wrong. If the American people would do that and make the government respond accordingly, I think we'd have a far better place in which to live.
We spoke to Mr. Cryer at the Freedom Rally in Washington Tuesday, and it was a real pleasure to get to speak to him. Did you receive any repercussions from this? Did the IRS come after you in any way for representing him and defeating them?
No, I represent people in a professional capacity as an attorney, and I like white collar crime. I like cases in federal court, and one of the reasons is a case. I like to try cases, and federal criminal cases kind of move right along. It's entirely different from a state case. You get involved in a state criminal prosecution, and it can take forever to get a case to trial. So, I kind of like federal criminal cases.